Hello, is anybody in there? What's up, ADHD crew? Today I'm going to talk to you guys all about medication tolerance. In the last few weeks I've noticed an overall reduction in the efficacy of my medication, but there are a number of factors that can contribute to this phenomenon. And if it's your first time here, just to let you know that I've been taking generic brands of methylphenidate. So how does this happen? Well, I've been doing a bit of research and I've looked at a few studies, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of information out there. It's actually very under-researched. Well, what I discovered is there's some kind of a defense mechanism in the brain where it becomes desensitized to dopamine, and this is how these drugs work. They act on the dopamine levels in the brain and increase the overall feeling of reward, which is why it's a stimulant. So when you become overstimulated, your body adapts to it, and the human body is very good at adapting to situations. But these dopamine receptors actually down-regulate themselves to prevent any further dopamine release into the synapses. And it's been shown that over time, in all cases of medication use, people eventually do increase their dosage as their body is able to metabolize it better. Say like if you take your medication back to back every single day for months and months at a time, the synapse functions actually get more effective at performing their job. So that's why it takes more of the substance to actually get the same feeling. Because I used to be on 18 milligrams, and I remember a time when that actually used to make me feel pretty good. But what I'm noticing now is that I take my medication in the morning and I'm waiting for it to kick in and I don't feel anything for hours. And it's getting me a bit worried. I'm starting to think that perhaps I'm going to have to switch my medication. I mean, that is an option that you could do if you find that you're building up a tolerance. You could always ask to try something else, because I think there are instances where people are no longer able to respond to drugs, so they have to switch it up. Tolerance means that a drug's effects decrease when it's taken consistently over time, so that an increased dose is needed to continue showing effects. So in this case, you can either stop your medication or you can just consult your doctor for an increased dosage. Another part of this tolerance could be the fact that you're using too many other stimulants, like drinking coffee, and that's probably something that might have contributed to my tolerance. And it's been shown in these studies as well that people who regularly use caffeine develop a tolerance adaptation. There's also another phenomenon that could be contributing to this effect, and it's actually called paradoxical decompensation. Bit of a mouthful, but it's a thing. And this is what happens when a substance causes physical dependence. And when these substances are suddenly ceased, they're stopped, it can cause withdrawal. And it results in a longer term worsening of ADHD symptoms, believe it or not. The only way to overcome this issue is to either increase the dose, which can help temporarily, but you're probably going to need to abstain altogether to reverse the effects. So what some medical professionals are recommending is that you take something called a drug holiday. And no, it's not what it sounds like, it's not anything dodgy. It's basically a temporary detoxification, and you can do this for a few days up to a few weeks. And another study on ResearchGate says that drug holidays or brief periods of medication discontinuation are a relatively frequent practice. One of the rationales expressed for the use of drug holidays has been to prevent development of tolerance. However, whether cessation of stimulant treatments increases the sensitivity to stimulants, or whether they decrease the requirement for the dose escalation over years, has never been systematically studied. And it's just allowing the neurons in your brain to resensitize themselves and be more receptive to having an appropriate effect the next time round that you take the stimulants. Although if you've developed a big tolerance to it, you may need to take a few months off altogether, or even switch to an entirely different medication. It can be done, and sometimes you just need to think of other options. And I've done this myself. Sometimes I've had to take a few weeks off the drug if I feel like it wasn't working for me anymore, or I feel like I've just hit a plateau. You can try taking nootropics, which are just naturally derived chemicals, usually from plant substances that have properties that can help elevate levels of dopamine naturally in the brain. I understand this might be quite alarming to some people because they feel like they can't function without their medication, and I totally sympathize with that. I think it is quite nerve-wracking to think, oh, I need this medication to help me get through work. What happens if I get fired? What happens if it causes chaos in my life and I start to fall apart? I get it, it's quite worrying. But if you have tolerance, really you have to find alternatives to undo that. So what I did to reverse this problem was I began by just reducing the amount of methylphenidate I took each week. So instead of having it, every day, I'd have it perhaps 2, maybe 3 times a week tops. and I'd introduce other things instead. So I'd have things like L-tyrosine, ginkgo biloba, caffeine, etc. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not going to be anywhere near as effective as the meds, so I'm not going to lie to you and say that this is going to help you in between feel the same way. It's not going to happen, but I mean, they can definitely provide you with some kind of improved performance, so definitely give it a consideration. And then eventually I've just abstained altogether for a few weeks. I've had perhaps a month off it, and I've just increased my activity, I've improved my diet, things like that. I mean, you've really just got to experiment and find out what works for you. It's the only way, really, guys. And while you're waiting for your dopamine sensitivity to return back to baseline, you're probably just going to want to do some research of natural products you can use. I mean, there's foods that can help with cognition and performance, things like that. You can just take a small break. Maybe that 5 to 7 days could be just the thing you need. So you never know. Thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button and giving the video a like if you enjoy the content. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.